Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You're watching Women's AM with myself, Liz, and on the panel joining me today we have Sisters Hassana and Nazia, and our special guest for today is Sister Khafaya. Welcome back, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair for joining us again, Sister Khafaya. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's always nice to be here.
Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about the workshops that you do for married couples.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about those and what that entails?
It's just more to do with how we deal with each other and understanding the language we speak, because men seem to want one thing and the woman seems to want something else.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's true, though, isn't it? You know, you send your man off to buy you something, tell him to go and get you a tin of tomatoes, and he comes back with something else, and it's like, but you didn't. So it's been about more explicit, and they want instructions, and they can't multitask, some people say. But it's more about understanding the language we speak, and then so how we can live together in harmony, based on our Islamic values and beliefs, and also incorporating our environment as well into that.
So, Sister Khafaya, you know, what was the motivation behind doing these workshops?
The motivation behind it was because I've had lots of people approach me, lots of young sisters, and saying to me that, like, sister, how do we get married? What do we need to look for in a man? How do we go about doing this? Because I don't want to get it wrong. I'm choosing my life partner. And then you also get married sisters saying that, you know, my marriage seems to be on the rocks. How can we, you know, smoothen things out, have a happy relationship? Because our children are emulating what we're doing, so we need to get it right, because they will look to us, and that's how they will think. If we're getting it wrong, that's how they're going to conduct their own marriages as well. So I just thought, okay, we need to do something here, and then I got into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really valuable to have that kind of support, because it's not always easy, isn't it? You know, navigating yourself through the, you know, the married relationship.
Exactly.
And like you say, men and women, you know, we are so different.
So different.
So, you know, that's really interesting. So it's lovely to hear a little bit more about what you do. I'm sure we'll be benefiting from your expertise in this discussion, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Right, now let's move on to today's topic in her views, where we're going to be discussing the Nikaah. The Nikaah, otherwise known as the marriage contract, is a life-changing event. It's the start of a wonderful new adventure, but it can also be very stressful. At a time when more and more young people are practicing Islam, wishing to get married and adhere to Islamic guidelines, there can be a whole host of tumbling blocks in the lead up to the wedding day. So what are the main issues that can arise leading up to the Nikaah, and what are the Islamic guidelines pertaining to it? Please join us in this live discussion if you have any comments or questions on this issue. The number to call should be appearing on your screen shortly, inshallah. So, Sister Khafaya, I'm going to start with you. Okay. So, what is the Nikaah? What is the marriage contract, and what are its main aspects?
For me, the Nikaah, simply put, is the solemn and, you know, social marriage contract between two individuals. And Islam has made it very, very simple for us to get married. You know, and it depends on what you know, whether you want to have a very, very basic marriage with a few people, or you want to have a big ceremony. So Islam has made it very easy for us. Now, with the marriage contract, it's also about having that mutual agreement between two parties. And we know the wali, who is the legal guardian, consenting to it, and the bride consenting to it. And one thing we really have to stress, because, you know, in the media it says that most women are forced into marriage, but no, you get married according, you know, out of your own free will. You're not pushed to it. And I think that's very, very important for us to
that is a really important part, and obviously it's part of the Nikah, isn't it, to say that, you know, both parties agree and they're consenting
of her own free will.
But I think that's really interesting, the point that you made about it's actually very easy to get married. You know, you just need the two witnesses. And that can actually fulfil your Nikah.
That's right. So you can give sweets out, because, you know, people do approach me and say, how is it so easy that you could get married? Because when I did my Nikah, I did it. I went into work that afternoon, went home early, came back next day, said I was married. And it was like, how did you do that? And I said, so you know, it was an opportunity to me to give dawah and explain how we can get married. So the ceremony can be as big or as small as you want it to be, and that's the beauty of our religion.
And what a beautiful thing is, it's half our deen, so it's nice to know that it's something we can so easily enter into. But I think, you know, one of the problems that we face is that there's a lot of emphasis put on the wedding day rather than investing in the actual strength of that marriage, of that union. So what are the repercussions of this?
You know, when I was looking into this, I was really staggered. For a lot of people, even just the discussion around the wedding day, we're told it's the biggest day of our lives. You know, we often get the question, so when's the big day? So all of those kind of things kind of add up to this idea that the wedding day is kind of that's the biggest point of a woman's life, really. And unfortunately, you know, that leads a lot of people to feel this pressure to put on a big, extravagant do to, you know, kind of fulfill what the community kind of sees as an appropriate event and things like that. And, you know, some people actually get into crippling levels of debt. And I've got some figures here. A staggering 85% of couples go into debt after their wedding. So this is, you know, they're just newlywed. And unfortunately, they've got this high levels of debt. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually warns us against this in the Quran. He says in Surah A'raf, verse 31, "But waste not by extravagance. Certainly He, Allah, likes not al-musrifun, those who waste by extravagance." So we have this understanding that, you know, a simple wedding really is best. But often there are cultural kind of pressures. And sometimes it comes from the family, sometimes it comes from the community. Sometimes the individual themselves wants a big wedding too. But I wanted to talk about, you know, one of the consequences of this, it means that for a lot of couples, they really struggle. And I was reading into this, and I saw an example of a couple in Singapore who actually spent $110,000 on their wedding, and the reality is they couldn't even afford to go on holiday after that because they literally had absolutely no money. And you know, one of the quotes from the article where they were interviewed, they said, "This is the real regret. We struggle from month to month just to make ends meet," and that is due to the debt of the wedding. And it's just absolutely astounding how people can spend so much on one day and not have that kind of long-sightedness to think about the rest of the life together.
It made me think about actually what pressure that's going to put on the relationship. Because for me, I would be thinking, this has got to work.
That's exactly it. That's it, because you spent so much money. And I think this is part of the problem. You know, we know that the Prophet ﷺ told us that the marriage which produces the most blessings is the one which involves the least burden. And we often think that, you know, debt and the wedding debt, as some people put it, is just one part of it. But actually, there's another consequence of this problem as well, and that is due to our mentality or attitude towards the wedding day. And you know, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about, you know, popular culture and the kind of things that we see in the movies and the TV shows, and it often shows the end of the story ending up in a wedding day, or, you know, the proposal, and that's where the story ends. But the reality is that's not where the story ends, that's the beginning.
That's true.
And so if we have this idea that, you know, everything's going to be fine after the wedding, I just need to get to the wedding and then I'll be fine, every fault in me will be fixed, you know, I'm going to come out on the other side a new person or whatever else it is, that's a really flawed way to look at it. And I was listening to talk about this, and Sister Yasmin Mujahid, she speaks really beautifully about this matter. She says, "Everyone around you will make you think that your path ends there, at the place where you meet your soulmate. Everything that was once broken will be fixed. The only problem is that's not where the story ends, that's where it begins. That's where the building starts, the building of a life, the building of your character, the building of sabr, patience, perseverance and sacrifice, the building of selflessness, the building of love, and the building of your path back to Him." And I think that's what it comes down to. We often forget that actually marriage is a tool, and it's a tool to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you're going to make that your focus and your goal rather than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in actual fact your whole attitude towards it is wrong. It's a tool like any other tool, you know, it's a tool like dhikr, like children, all of those kind of things, and you have to treat it as such. You can't make that your focus. Your ultimate focus is building your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think that's one of the real dangers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it kind of brings us back to our news stories from this morning about chasing after, you know, something that's in the dunya rather than chasing after something that's in the hereafter. And this is a really dangerous trap to get into, and there's many ways that we can fall into this, isn't there? Islamically, the couple, you know, they're encouraged to get to know each other before the wedding. How's the best way to do this, that they can embark upon a life of piety together after the marriage?
Okay, so when the parties are considering each other, this is something, it is permitted for them to look to see what they look like, provided obviously you've got the mahrams, all these kind of checks in place, there's no khalwa issue. We know this. The Messenger of Allah said, "Go and look at her, the woman you are considering marrying, because this will help you your time together to be strengthened." So this clearly shows there are aspects of which, when you're considering a person, yes, we do look at what they look like. We do look at the factors such as, do we have things in common? Do we have the same goals in life? What are we all planning in terms of our futures? All of those things, we have to look at these things.
Yeah.
But what we have to also understand is the preference is for the deen.
Yeah.
We know this because, you know, we know the ayah that talks about it. But what, you know, if I give an example, Sulaim, she was approached by Abu Talha. And basically, he was known to be the most handsomest, the richest. He came from a very good family. But when he proposed marriage to her, she refused. She refused on the grounds because he wasn't a Muslim at the time. So clearly, the emphasis is there in terms of the deen. Why is this the case? Because ultimately, the question where you said, how do you then plan a life based around the deen? Well, ultimately, it's going to come from that person who shares that same understanding of life. Yeah. If he's going to come back and wants the same things in terms of, right, we're going to build a home based upon Islam, based upon Islamic values, then obviously this is then going to lead to a pious life. Yeah. You know, regarding getting to know one another, I mean, this is the thing, that this is something that you have to have that supervised conversation. Yeah, that has to be there. You have to have the permission of the wali. It's very important to understand that. And I think one of the things that we notice in society now is that this whole concept of, okay, we've spoken to someone, and then you have this period of engagement. Yeah. Now, engagement doesn't mean that you are now free to have that kind of conversation with them under the pretext that I'm getting to know them. No, once you have established basically that I like this individual, I think I share the same common interests and things like that, then it's just a matter of making a decision. You do istikhara, you know, you consult people around you, and then you put trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of your decision, and you leave it at that. But at no point do you have the kind of relationships that you often see in society where people are, you know, they sort of go out together, they have that kind of, you know, where they may be having free mixing going on, and which can obviously lead to flirting. All of this is not permissible. Yeah. So this is something I think people sort of get confused with, that, you know, how is it that we then, you can understand a lot about the other person just simply based upon the kind of questions you ask and in the terms of the context that's around you. But it's also having that confidence and that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doing those things, if you approach something in a halal way, then inshallah you will see the barakah of it. And I think this is something that we have to, you know, we have to understand. So just going back to the Prophet ﷺ, whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him not have a private audience with a woman without her mahram. In another hadith, a woman who is married for her deen or her wealth or her beauty, you must go for the one with deen. May your hands be in dust. So it's basically all pointing to the fact that if you ultimately want a good marriage, a prosperous marriage, these are the qualities that you look for. And if you approach it in the right way, then inshallah there will be barakah in what comes afterwards.
That's true. I think absolutely this is something that we want Allah to bestow His mercy and His barakah upon. So obviously we have to do it in the way that is most beloved to Him, inshallah. We have a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Khadija from Glasgow.
Alaikum salam.
Welcome to the show, sister. Do you have a question or a comment for us?
I do. I myself am a reaver, maybe around 3-4 years ago, and my husband is from Nigeria. We got married on January this year.
Alhamdulillah.
And been together around maybe 3 years, something like that. And what I find I need to kind of know is about Nikaah. When you get married, there's a different clash between culture and Islam. Yeah. And I think it's hard to find a dividing line between where, you know, where he imposes my Islamic duties you know, upon him, what I should do for him. But I'm kind of confused as to what is culture and what is Islam, although I know my duties as a wife.
No, absolutely.
I just want to know, you know, how do you make a marriage work? Because, you know, we've had so many problems, and it's more so, I think, a culture clash. But he will say it's Islam. I'm not too sure whether it is or it's not. So.
Jazakallah khair for the question, sis. May Allah make it easy for you. That is actually a really good question. I think many of us have this, you know, have encountered this issue. A lot of us are in, you know, multicultural relationships and have come across this. Sister Khafaya, what advice would you give to the sister in terms of, you know, recognising the difference between culture and Islam in terms of her responsibilities as a wife?